Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. Anything you put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. Roslyn Weems is a financier, venture capitalist. She's got a book called Wake Up Your Wealth. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. She is the principal of the Wealth Consortia, LLC, which is a wealth strategy and education firm.
The process that we go through, the sacrifices that we make, they're all custom designed. They don't feel good. I think that we probably get angry at God, angry at ourselves as we go along. But in the end, what you realize is it's not the destination. The destination is always sure. If you stay the course, it is the journey that is critical, because the journey is what makes you and what drives your character so that you can be effective at reaching other people that you will meet along the journey. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah, I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks. And before I introduce our guest today, let me thank you for tuning in today, taking a moment to comment on this podcast, share this podcast, like this podcast. And of course, 5-star reviews are great if you like it. You know, I get to sit down and talk with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet. You know, it never fails to surprise me or humble me in terms of who will come on the show, who comes on the podcast. Let me tell you who I'm going to talk to today. She wouldn't even send me a resume, so I had to find one. I mean, what guest does that? Our guest today did. Roslyn Weems is a financier, a venture capitalist, an international hotelier. I may not have said that right, but I threw some French in there. Hotelier. She's also an interior designer. She's an author. She is a globetrotter and the principal of the Wealth Consortia, LLC, which is a wealth strategy and education firm. I talked about her being an author. She's got a book called Wake Up Your Wealth. And I don't know if you all can see that. For those who are not seeing the video, I've got Post-its all over the place. So I don't even know. I don't want to, get the book. It's really good, and I think you should read it. So there we have it. Hey, Roslyn Weems, I want to welcome you to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Yeah, well, today we're going to talk about wealth today. And
my favorite subject.
It's your favorite subject. And I think people are going to find out today that wealth is not just money. And when they find out how wealthy you can become, yes, financially, but as a total person, I think this podcast is going to have a great impact. Before we start going down the discussion about wealth, I want to go back to your childhood. You were the 14th of 14 children, and you're from Laurel, Mississippi. My mom and my family is from Forest, Mississippi, and that's not too far from where you are. But you did not grow up in great wealth. In fact, it may have been close to the opposite. You may not have known all of that. But as I read your book, one of the things that you did as a child was begin to have certain confessions. We're gonna today, as we kind of journey down here, you talked a lot about commitment, consistency, and then I call it confessions. You begin to tell yourself something as a child that has come to fruition. Can you take us through that moment where you determined, you said in your book that you're going to be wealthy? How did that come to you? Can you kind of give us some background on that?
Well, I feel so honored to be the 14th child of the late Ernest Weems, who was called Big Chief. And my mother
Nezzy Lee Weems, very Southern names. I came to them very late in their life. In fact, my mother turned 50 less than 30 days after I was born. So my dad always said, your mother had to give me 13 other kids in order to get to you. And I was like, yeah, because I'm the prize, Daddy, I'm the prize. So because my parents did not come from a background of money. They were very, very hardworking people, very salt of the earth people. We grew up in poverty, actually. As a kid, you don't know that. You don't realize it until you become probably about a teenager. And then you start to look back and realize, oh my God, we were poor. Well, we were really, really poor. And because my brothers and sisters were so much older than me, I remember one of them, my sister Shirley, coming home with her husband once. They had jobs at Wendy's, and we had no food in the house. And my sister and her husband had this old car, I think it was something like a Toyota, and they pulled up in the driveway and it was full of groceries. And I thought it was Christmas because I had never seen that much food. We were that poor. But because we were so poor, the one thing that we were rich in was literature. And so I read a lot. And my parents advocated for me reading a lot. And my reading opened me up to the world. I mean, I used to read encyclopedias. That was my hobby. And so because I read so much, I believe it was the reading combined with my mother, who is a woman of very, very deep faith. She really advocated for my reading, and probably just reading and playing outside were my pastimes. And so she discovered also that I was a writer. And the way she discovered it was I used to write stories on the walls of the house that we grew up in. And she would tell me in her very Southern way, Miss Roz, don't write on my walls now. You have got to stop writing on my walls. But I kept writing. I'd write stories, and the stories that I wrote were my life stories. Fast forward to adulthood, I didn't realize that I was predicting my own life. So one of the things that I did was I used to write on the wall, I am going to make millions and millions of dollars. I'll be a millionaire. The second thing was I would travel around the world. I would live in New York City. I would have a blonde-haired Cocker Spaniel and go to the beach every day. And I would eat pizza and shrimp. And so that was my confession as a kid. That was one of them. But what I realized when I look back on my life was a central theme to my confessions were surrounding wealth. It was always at the center of all of my confessions. So where I am now, I foretold my life as a child. And my confession, I have done all of those things. And actually, by the time people probably see this, the last thing on my list in that particular story of my life was living in New York. I will have accomplished that.
Wow, that's just so amazing to me. I want to talk about there's a conversation that you had with God, and these dreams and things that you had as a kid. And you had a conversation with God about your life before you came to the earth. That was amazing to me. For those who, we hear this scripture about Jeremiah 29:11, a lot of people quote it. I know the plans I have for you to prosper you and bring you to a successful end and that type of stuff. You had this conversation. You're so creative and a writer. You had a conversation in your mind that you saw you had with God before you got here. Can you talk about that a little bit, because it ties into your confessions?
I don't have my book in front of me. I would read the exact quotes or the exact conversations that I had, but they all go back to wealth and building wealth. And I feel like that we all, before we come to earth, we make an agreement with God. And part of that agreement is accomplishing the thing that we desire to accomplish when we are adults, and then fulfilling that once we get here. So I think I had more than one conversation about God. It's not all in that particular book. It's going to come. Some other conversations are going to come up in subsequent books.
Well, it was amazing because, again, there was such clarity in your conversation about your success in the future and the amount of money and the things that you were going to do with it. And your understanding that you were sent to the earth and you were good with that. How do you define wealth?
So wealth is twofold. Wealth is, of course, monetary. And the way that I define monetary wealth is having enough money that you worry about only how you're going to allocate that money. So that's wealth in a monetary sense. In another sense, wealth is, by my definition, this isn't law, okay? By my definition, wealth is being rich in every area of your life, rich in relationships, rich in your mental health, rich in your physical health, rich in your spiritual wealth. Because if you have that kind of robust riches in your life, wealth in your life, then the monetary wealth it's not second nature, but it's inevitable. That's the word that I will use. It's like you have to be well in all of your life before you can be completely wealthy as far as money is concerned.
So having an abundance mindset and,
Yes.
and learning how to live in that space of consciousness. What was your journey like? Now, you've accomplished a lot of things, but I want to go back. I remember you talking about for our listeners who don't understand the business that she's in. She is a Black woman from Mississippi in a predominantly white male industry who has had extraordinary success. I remember you talking about the early part of your career, or hearing you say that your weekends you had hiking boots on and was spending time in the mountains with people that eventually were your mentors. Can you talk about that experience a little bit and why it's important to be open to growth as you seek wealth?
So I worked for a firm that was based in San Francisco here in the US. And on the weekends, I would hike with my managing director, and usually about 4 to 6 other people, very high profile. I won't name drop, but they are names that probably everybody knows. And so we would hike at a place called Mount Tam in Marin County. And I say it's a hike. It accomplished several things. It was a business meeting, a strategy meeting. It was a way to get exercise and a way to interact with close colleagues. And so what happened to me was every weekend I was hiking and then walking the beach. That's how I spent my weekends. Now that was work, but it was pleasurable work. But in the process of going on those hikes, which I wasn't obligated to do, I was asked to attend, I learned the world of high finance. I learned the method of the 1%. And I eventually adopted those methods for my own life, which is not something in the Black community in particular we're privy to, but I was privy to that. And it turned out that it was beneficial and it started to shape my life.
As you look back at that, obviously that was not a part of you growing up. I don't know if you envisioned being in the mountains on the weekends. You obviously loved the beach because that was one of your 5 things that you were going to have to check off the list.
Yes.
The journey to success is not an easy one, and regardless of the profession. And people see you now. And they want to be like you. But I don't know if they want to go through
what you had to go through to get there. Can you talk about the journey and some of the sacrifices that you had to make in order to follow this dream of yours?
Oh, absolutely. We all have a process. We all have a journey that we go through. And I believe that our processes are all custom designed for us based on who we are and those conversations that we have with God before we come to earth. The interesting thing about God is he never gives us the choice of method. We just agreed to come here, and he says, okay, the method that he uses to process us is always a surprise. It is always a surprise. So for instance, mine was, I haven't talked about this a lot, but I was homeless. And I was homeless in San Francisco. And I'm not saying I was homeless living with a friend. No, I was really homeless. No home, nowhere to go, nothing. But God intervened in my life in such a way that it changed everything about me and for me. And so today I'm sitting here. But one of the other things that happened was within my process, the sacrifices was I spent a lot of time working. I'm a young Black woman working in high finance. I felt like I always had to be one day ahead of my white colleagues. And it turned out that I was right, because sometimes the situations that I would be in, or the portfolios that I would be called onto the carpet about, had I not spent time working and preparing and studying, I would not have had the answers that would have been asked of me, in various situations. I would not have acquired the skill set that I have now in order to manage and advise and teach on the level that I teach on. So the process that we go through, the sacrifices that we make, they're all custom designed. They don't feel good. I think that we probably get angry at God, angry at ourselves as we go along. But in the end, what you realize is it's not the destination. The destination is always sure if you stay the course. It is the journey that is critical, because the journey is what makes you and what drives your character so that you can be effective at reaching other people that you will meet along the journey.
Well, you said a mouthful, and toward the end of that, you talked about so you can be effective to reach the people you're supposed to reach along the journey.
Right.
So it sounds like the journey, the method, the process is bigger than you, and that it is a sign that you're assigned to some other people to help them to get to their purpose. Is that a fair statement?
It absolutely is. And here's the thing. There's a lot of talk about social media influencers, celebrities. People want millions of dollars and billions of dollars. But the key to having all of that is, first of all, knowing who you are, and then having the mindset to handle the capacity of what you're asking for. Here's something else. God could say to you, okay, David, you are going to do a podcast. You're going to be in front of billions of people. And I want you to go through heart attack, losing your house, going into bankruptcy, being homeless. You're going to go through all of these things, because there is one person that I want to hear your testimony. That's Roslyn Weems down in New Hampshire. She won't hear you until 20 years into this. The question I think that we have to wrestle with is, are we willing to sacrifice and be processed if the audience is not an audience of millions, but an audience of one? What if that is God's desire for you to reach that one, and he takes you through a plethora of challenges? Are you willing to stay the course for that one person? That's what we wrestle with, because we just don't know.
Wow. So embracing the unknown is so important, and getting comfortable with the unknown, knowing that the unknown can be approached in one of two ways.
Absolutely.
fear or faith. But you're going to go into the unknown. We're going to take a quick break here in a moment. But before we do that, you talked about something, and I want to read something from your book and get your response. Because you talked about having the mindset and the capacity to receive that which you are desiring or what you want to become. You said, choose yourself first each time. The way to succeed in any area of life is to choose you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
Absolutely. If I did not make the decision to become healthy, I was depressed. I was a manic depressive. I was suicidal. If I did not make the decision to become whole, I was angry about a lot of things growing up in poverty. My parents didn't have the best marriage. I was angry at my dad, and I was a daddy's girl. I was angry at God. If I didn't make the conscious decision to be completely healthy and whole and in my right frame of mind, I would never have been that young woman hiking every weekend, learning the ins and outs of the 1%. I had to realize that I had to choose myself first, and I had to choose me every single time, because without me, there is no purpose fulfilled. There is no purpose fulfilled through me for God. So I had to be number one. It's that story of if the plane goes down and the oxygen masks fall from the safety compartment, you put your mask on first, and then you put your mask on for your child. Your child will not survive if you don't. So you have to choose yourself first so that every other thing that's been destined for you can unfold. And for some people, that may be a tough decision. It's not selfish. That's actually generous, because you're willing to say, I'm going to put myself on the line and pour myself out so that other people can be touched and their lives can be changed by what God has done through me. That's why you have to choose yourself first.
Wow. In my book, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose, I talk about servant leadership, and I talk about the importance of, before you can help me get through the door, I need for you to open the door and walk through it and be on the other side of the door. Because if you don't, I will probably roll over your feet, and that's not going to be comfortable. So that falls in line with what you just said about the importance of choosing yourself and taking care of yourself first. And we're going to get into self-care a little bit later on in the podcast today, and why that is so important. But when we come back, I want to talk about paperclips and pineapples. I know the guests are like, what? Yes, when we come back,
That is so good.
Roslyn Weems, we're going to talk about paperclips and pineapples. And I didn't tell you guys this. This book has been read by countless thousands of business students all over this country. And you don't need to be a business student to get this book. It is full of things that will help you. This is not going to talk about how you get rich quick, but it lays down the principles for you to grow and wake up the wealth that is in you. We'll be right back after this quick break with Roslyn Weems. We're going to be talking about paperclips and pineapples. We'll be right back.
Here's a chance to win a signed copy of David's inspiring book, detailing his personal journey, Getting Undressed, from Paralysis to Purpose. Each month, there will be 2 giveaways. Just leave us a review of today's podcast on the platform you're listening from. It's that easy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, with our guest, Roslyn Weems, author of the book, Wake Up Your Wealth. You just need to get it. That's all I'm saying. Before the break, I said I wanted to come back and talk to you about paperclips and pineapples. You mentioned them in your book. Could you walk our audience through the totality of what that means for you?
So as a child, I had a great imagination. What I didn't know was, as an adult, it would be like, to the second power. So in a good way. There's something that I thought about. I used to think about often, and I still do. The things that we use throughout our life. So I was sitting at my desk one day and looking at the things that are on my desk. I think it had been a particularly rough trading week. And I had a paperclip in my hand. And I started to think, who invented the paperclip? And, everybody uses paperclips, whether you're in an office or a school or just at home. I think that probably every person on earth has used a paperclip. So John Vaylor, a name that probably a lot of people have never heard. John Vaylor, you ever heard that name before reading my book?
No.
1899 to 1890, he invented the paperclip. And so if you think about it, the paperclip is a very small piece of technology that heretofore has been used everywhere. The paperclip was an idea whose time had come. It's around the globe. It completely changed Vaylor's life. Almost every single person on earth emerging in Western countries, I will say, have used paperclips. Everybody has a paperclip idea. You have to do an exploration and find out, what is your paperclip idea? What is your idea that will touch the world? Everybody has that idea, but not everyone will tap into their paperclip idea. So I asked myself, what is my paperclip? Where is my paperclip? I began to ask God that, and God showed it to me. Another thing that struck me was pineapples. Pineapples are native to South America, and there's a picture of a pineapple on the book. Sweet fruit. It's now pineapple season. I had pineapples yesterday. They were phenomenal. Pineapples were a symbol of wealth in the mid 17th century. If you had pineapples, even if you didn't, what people did was, in American colonies, people that had pineapples, they would rent them out to other people. So when people had dinner parties or gatherings, they would put pineapples in the center of their table because they were thrilled to showcase this symbol of wealth. So, what's your paperclip idea? What is your pineapple that you're carting around? I think today, a great symbol of wealth is your intellect. It's not so much something material that you show off, but back to the paperclip idea, we all have something within us that is meant to be used, meant to touch the world. And that world could be one person, a single person, who may then turn around and touch millions of people around the world. So you have to do this exploration, find out what your paperclip is and what your pineapple is. We all have them.
It's so interesting as I listen to you. Everything points back to your original statement as a child, I will be wealthy. And so I think you're clear on your purpose and what you're supposed to do. And I never knew that pineapples were a symbol of wealth. I mean, that's crazy. And that you just happened, and you didn't know that until you researched it, and you just happen to love pineapples.
Yes.
Connect those dots, right?
Right. But the biggest clue for me, it's really important that we each do a deep dive into our lives, because one of the biggest clues for me about my purpose was my purpose surrounding wealth and teaching wealth and investing. The biggest clue for me was I was born in poverty. That was the biggest clue. There's sort of a dichotomy there. I was born in poverty. I used to read the newspaper and look at the list of the stocks in the paper. And I would say to my dad, Daddy, why don't you buy these stocks? I mean, it's just amazing how my life unfolded. But if you do a deep dive and really examine all the particles of your life, if you don't know purpose or understand your purpose, you'll see it in black and white. It will be very, very clear. So I was born into a poverty situation in order to grow up and find myself in immense wealth so that I could go back and then teach people how to come out of situations like poverty. Yeah.
Let's talk about that because legacy is important to you.
Very important.
And I want you to define legacy for me. And then also, why is it so important for you to give back?
So legacy is, for me, I define legacy as memory. I believe that even long after our physical bodies are gone, the people that are left here that love us have the memory of who we are and what we did in their lives and in the earth. And legacy is so important because the things that we create, we can't take them with us, when we make our exit, but they can continue to live on in the earth and they can continue to be beneficial to people. I believe in the Black community, we have been so robbed and raped of our legacy. Things like journals, tangible things like furnishings, family photographs, those things were taken in a lot of instances. We were never permitted to have them. But the memories, when you think about the slaves, the things that they had, the skill of crocheting or the skill of making a great meal for a family, those are things that can never be taken. That's a legacy that can be passed on from generation to generation. And because we, in our community, we're so robbed of not just who we were, but what we brought, our contributions. I am very, very passionate about helping people to build and leave legacies.
And you're very intentional. You talked about
Yes.
passionate, but I think you're intentional, and you do. And this is what I love. You do things on purpose for purpose.
Yeah.
And so there is no cavalier approach to what you're trying to accomplish. You're very specific on how you want to do it, and you're looking for an end result. So I think that's something important, as you talked about, again, consistency, commitment, and confession throughout your book. And you're very consistent with what you do, and you're very, very targeted. And that's a lesson for us in terms of when we're trying to make a difference. Sometimes you can't be doing everything.
Right.
You got to stay in your lane and get that done. So a part of waking up your wealth is dealing with loss. LOSS. We all deal with loss throughout our lives. As a financier, you've dealt with loss. You talk in your book about losing $10 million at one time.
Yes.
At one time.
Yes.
And how that took you to a place, and we'll get there. But then you also talked about, and this has really struck me, the loss of your brother and your nephew. And there's a saying that you have that applies to most things in life, but not when you lose a loved one, a family member. And it's a saying that I know from being in one of your classes, is that there's always another trade.
Yes.
There's always another trade. You can get a chance to recover those losses. Financially, that's true. But when it comes to losing family members, you don't get another trade. Can you talk about that part of your journey and dealing with loss and how you can turn loss into gain?
Yeah. So I lost my father in 2003. We lost a sister, a brother, and a nephew, and all of those losses were really, really hard for my family. I was a daddy's girl, so losing my dad was particularly difficult. And I was talking to my best friend this morning, and I said, I miss my dad so much to this day. So losses, ironically, are something that I'm well acquainted with. The loss of family, but also the loss of money. And so when my brother, Dr. Terry Weems, lost his baby, who lived only 28 days, it was a particularly difficult blow. And I didn't understand it. None of us understood. None of us understood it. It was the promised baby. It was the baby that was prophesied. But the thing that I think we had to come to terms with was God fulfilled his promise, but the baby still exited the earth sooner than we expected or would have wanted. Oftentimes, I teach in my classes, no matter the loss, there's a lesson. Of course, there's some lessons we don't want to learn, but some we can only learn through losses. I learned exactly how strong I was through my $10 million loss. I learned that I didn't have to jump off a cliff or drive my car into the ocean, which is literally what I was planning to do behind that $10 million loss. But I also learned that I had to trust myself and the decisions that I made, because it was only going to be, in the end, up to me when I made a certain decision based on, something that happened in the market or some portfolio design that had come up in a strategy meeting. So the losses are necessary. There's almost like there has to be a rebalancing in your life, and it can only happen through loss. But the good thing is, and we know this in the Christian community, is there's a grace. There's a divine grace that carries you through every single loss. And although you can't get back a brother or a nephew, because that's a kind of loss that you just can't get back. And I think that people don't recover from. I think you learn to live with it, but I think you don't recover from. When you talk about losses in trading, you can always pivot into another trade. And as long as you keep in mind that there is always another decision, another trade, you can live through things that are really, really tough, like losses.
Wow. Yeah, I still use this phrase: as long as there's time on the clock, you can still change the game. And till it says 0, 0, 0, then then there's nothing you can do. But as long as there's some time, you can still have an impact. Losing $10 million is, for I don't know for the rest of my listeners, but the first time I said that, and that's in the context. You have to understand, you have to have it to lose it.
Right.
You get that?
And if that's all you have, you're in trouble.
And if that's all you have, you're in trouble. So it gives us context a little bit in terms of where you were and are now. You talk about relationship currency is everything. Yeah. Relationship currency is everything. I want to read something from your book, because here on the podcast, we spend a lot of time talking about the importance of perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. And here's something you said: nothing is ever successful in isolation. We all need people. We need each other. We all need a community. If you wake up your wealth, if you tap into the purpose, your goal, your gift, the desire that lies deep within you, you can't express that desire in this earth without a community. I think success that is not shared, in my definition, is not success.
Yeah.
Can you just expound a little bit on partnerships and the currency of relationships?
So I have a few friends that I can, I'm going to say this. I know this is a podcast, but I can, if I need to get to Europe, I can pick up the phone and call them and say, I need to get to be in London tomorrow without ever leaving my house. I can get on a plane and get to London. I can only do that because of the relationship that I have with particular people. Relationship currency is the most valuable currency in the world, because sometimes there are things that your money cannot do, but your relationships can accomplish that for you. For instance, and speaking of plane rides, I was trying to get to my mother who was sick last summer. I could not book a flight. I had the money to buy the flight, but I called up someone and I said, I need to get to Mississippi. And I literally got there within hours. Relationship currency is just everything. We need people. And I'm a person that I love solitude and remoteness because I'm a writer. However, the community of people make me an author. I can write books all day long, but if people don't buy my books and read them or check them out at the library, I'm just a person writing a book. I still need that community of people to make me an author. So that's what I mean when I say relationship currency is very important, and community is very important. It's great walking on the beach alone. It's great being on an island alone. But at some point, that human interaction and that human connection, which is something that we all crave, we all need it, and we all tend to go back to it.
Money is the lowest form of prosperity.
Yes, it is.
You alluded to it earlier in our conversation about being a whole person, being wealthy in every place of your life. Can you talk about the importance of that, and in that, especially about self-care?
Well, when it comes to wealth and enormous amounts of money and assets that people typically want, you can be a person who is, whatever your age is, you can acquire suddenly $50 million. If you were the person before 50 million who just spent freely, you're going to be that same person after you acquire $50 million, and you're going to spend freely. You can spend freely, people are free to do whatever they want to do. However, money is something that demands specific responses. Money demands organization, measuring, and circulating. Okay. There's an acronym that I use. It's MOM. When you have money and wealth, you have to start thinking in terms of measuring and organizing so that you can maintain your money. If you are not a person who is well in all areas of your life, and also, David, working on yourself, you always have to work on yourself. If you are not working on every area of your life, when you walk into monumental wealth, you will still be that person who buys 10 cars in a month, or, loans everybody that calls you up money, or that just goes and buys all kinds of designer things. You fill your life with depreciating assets, and you'll wake up in a month's time or a few months' time, like a lot of lottery winners that we read about, and you'll find yourself that same person that you were before attaining that wealth. There's something that happens over the course of our lives. And if you look at your life closely, you'll see this. You're always changing. And the reason you're always changing is because there are always new levels of our existence that we're moving towards. And as we move towards those new levels, the thing that we absolutely must understand is old self cannot dwell in new self. So you have to constantly work on your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical wealth, so that you can be fit for that, net worth that you seek. Because if you are not ready for it mentally and in all areas of your life, as easily as it comes, it will leave much easier.
You talked about having a therapist in the book. And I just think that it would be good for people to understand, as successful as you are, and you're very successful, Roslyn. But you still have things that you want to talk through with people and things that you want to get clarity on. Why is it so important to have a coach or a therapist in your life?
Well, it's important to have a coach, a therapist, definitely a therapist, because I always want to make sure that I'm mentally on top of my game. And I want to make sure that if there's any little thing festering in me, I talk it out and I work it out so that I can make decisions accordingly. David, I'm a grudge holder. And so I need my therapist. I used to hold grudges against positions in the market that went against me. So I needed to talk through something as simple as that with my therapist. It's important to my mental health and my spiritual health, my overall well-being, to go and work those things out. Just like you go into the gym and you're lifting weights because you want great biceps and triceps, you got to have the mental muscle to be in a great place to handle the capacity of wealth that you desire. So I go to a therapist. I think everybody should go to a therapist and or a coach. They help you go through things that you may not realize, that you might avoid, that you may procrastinate on. And all those things are hindrances to you becoming that new person that you should be and that you deserve to be, so that you can live the life that you desire, that you came here for.
I always ask my guests, I believe that on a journey from paralysis to purpose, and we didn't talk specifically about financial paralysis, but we indirectly did today. I believe that perspective, perseverance, and partnerships are key to get you from a difficult place. Any place that is keeping you from functioning fully is paralysis. Right. Getting to your place of purpose, which involves serving somebody else. Along that journey, these are three things that I just believe are true: perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. When you hear the word perspective, Roslyn, what do you think of?
So I think when I hear perspective, changing the lens through which I look at any negative situation. For instance, when I was homeless, I did get to the point where I said, okay, now that I'm here, how am I going to use this to my advantage? And I came up with a plan. I crafted a strategy. I literally did that. And when I did that, then there was divine intervention. So I changed the way I saw my situation, and then my situation changed.
She changed the way she saw her situation, and then her situation changed. So often we want to wait for our situation to change before we see it differently. Right. And it's normally the opposite that works. That is powerful. Right. Wow. Perseverance. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say one other thing about perspective. It is faith. The scripture says faith without works is dead. But if you transpose that, dead is work without faith. So you can't wait until you see the thing that you desire. You have to take the steps going toward that. And then your declaration has to be that you're already there. And before you know it, the thing that you're saying, you will actualize. Change your perspective.
Wow. Changing your perspective leads to manifestation.
Yes, it does.
You have persevered. I know you have, because you were hiking in the mountains and doing all that kind of stuff. That still is amazing to me. When you hear the word perseverance, why is that word important? What comes to mind for you?
Well, perseverance is important because human beings are funny. We will take on other people's problems and projects and dreams, and we will work really, really hard for other people, but we will neglect ourselves. Human beings tend to give up a lot, and the first people we give up on will be us. When really, it goes back to what I wrote about in Wake Up Your Wealth. We have to choose us first. Because if we don't choose us first, then our world and everything that was intended for our world never comes about. So you have to persevere no matter the challenge that comes about. Everything that you desire, and I bet a lot of people have heard this, is on the other side of that challenge that you face. It's just like God is waiting, and all of the universe is pushing you to just take one more step. And it's always that one more step where people tend to give up. That one more step takes you to everything you desire.
I mean, one of the things that with this podcast, we try to encourage people that you are probably that close. You are so close to getting your breakthrough, so close to getting over the hump. Just keep going. And that becomes huge. We didn't talk about this before, but your education you're a journalist major. You're a journalism person, and you actually wanted to be on TV.
Yes.
And do that. So, and I mention that now because, you don't know where your education will take you, but without one, you go nowhere. And it becomes important to have something to work with. And although your dream and you were writing and to be a journalist, you became a financier, but now all of a sudden, you're writing books and you're teaching classes. You're doing all of those things in a different way than you probably would have thought. And you have allowed for a redirection in your life. It's for people who deal with challenges and obstacles like I've had to. I tell them that they don't redefine you, they redirect you. My purpose did not become paralyzed when my legs did. It was up to me to figure out now the route to take to make sure I get to that place.
Right.
Well, we haven't talked about that today, man. We got to go because we could talk. Could you talk about the importance of finding your happy place? And getting there?
So that's such an interesting area that you bring up. The one thing that I'm sure of, is you have to partner with yourself. It goes back to choosing yourself first and each time. When you partner with yourself, everything else unfolds the way that it should unfold. It's not, a company or another person. It's your own commitment to decide to partner with you, because you are your greatest commodity, and what you have to bring is your greatest commodity. And once we accept that, as the great Archbishop Eben R. Jordan says, acceptance is the end of all suffering. Once we accept that we are our own greatest commodity, our own greatest cheerleader, then we can walk into a state of happiness. And at the same time, we walk into everything that God has intended for us, which is our purpose. It is our purpose. Partner with yourself. That is how you win, partnering with yourself.
Wow. And so, I was going to ask you, when you hear the word partnerships, what do you think of? Well, you answered the question before I asked the question. So I'm not going to ask you that question.
I was trying to answer it all, wrap it all up in one, because I know your time is, coming to an end.
I tell you what, the last thing I will say from your book, the last sentence says, more than anything, know that you are extraordinary.
Yes.
I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds or so to say whatever you want to our audience today.
So when God created me, he only created one me. And the same is true about anyone that is listening to the podcast or anyone that will see this on any social media program. Don't ever deny or discount your unique ability to be you. There's only one you. There's only one original. And that one you, that one Roslyn, that one David is absolutely extraordinary. And that is your superpower.
Well, Roslyn, this has been a remarkable conversation. We talked about wealth. We talked about money, because they're not the same. We talked about mental health and a whole bunch of other things. So if people want to follow you, what is the best way for them to follow you? I know you're on social media and you got a lot of things going on.
Yes. So my website is wealthconsortia.com. That's wealth, CONSORTIA.com. And then I'm on all social media platforms under the same Wealth Consortia.
Well, I would encourage you, if you're out there and you want to find out more about Roslyn and the work that she does, and maybe you want to get in some of her classes and learn about investing, I would encourage you to do so. She is doing a great work in this earth and taking the money and the wealth that she has earned and making a difference and impacting millions of people literally around the world. And that's why I just want to thank you, Roslyn, for coming today. I know your schedule is, I think I'm busy. I don't even know what busy is. You are busy. So
thank you for having me. I'm so honored to have been here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is David Cooks reminding you, until next time on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
Growing up a little person, you're already wired to think things differently in a world that's not made for you. You go up, an average person goes up to a chair and they don't think, they just turn and sit. A little person goes up and they think, all right, do I need to hold on to the table? Do I need to turn and climb up in the chair forward and then turn around and sit down?
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
David Bentley is joining us today.
How do you get from your chair to your bed? I would dive first in the bed and do a roll. That's how I got into my bed. And the therapist, I would shock them the heck out of them. But they finally were like, you know what? This is what's easy for you. And what I did was, and they would tell you, is I caused those therapists to have to think differently.
Paralysis to purpose.